see what we're kind of walking around. It's a lake. You just kind of see that Texas lake. People in Texas love it, but I'm not a water person. I am a hikey person, a mountain person, cave person. Hey, welcome back. I'm nordus-mocwyl, and let's continue our walk and talk. And we're talking about a post-mortem for the Urbit app ecosystem. Namely, like talking about where Gall has failed us. And as I said at the top of the last one, like I have a conclusion that I made looking at all the, everything that I could get my hands on and my own personal experience helping building some of these apps. And I'm surprised when other Urbit people don't share my opinion, don't share my conclusion. And so I think the thing that's going to help is by pulling out what I'm looking at, getting it out on the table, pulling it out on the desk, and looking at it just the same. And maybe then people kind of see what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking. So to recap what is on the desk, so let's do a little survey here. We looked at some of the good that Gall has presented us. We probably most importantly, we looked at what were the promises at launch of the Urbit like apps. When app distribution went live, there was certain promises and expectations, and when the people started building the apps like they expected, permissionless distribution, interoperability, and customization. Probably interoperability being the most important one there. Dang, my arm. What else is out here on the desk? I'm gonna switch. I totally underestimated how much that would cause problems. Beyond videos from the launch, there's also videos from the peak, like the hype. So we have this crypto hype, and we had investments, new businesses and investments that expect ROIs. And so those are sitting there with the new Urbit businesses that are tied to these apps and hopes for the future. There's also there's something else that I wanted to highlight. And it is a part of that Miami kind of rise, that peak of everything. My fear of other people is palpable, isn't it? Like in a horror film. One of the other things that I wanted to really get out there is there's a great talk from Gall where he talks about primitives, that these apps should be primitive apps that you can link into, and everything should be able to use, you don't need to reinvent everything over and over and over, like chat app after chat app. Like, why is there Slack and Discord? Can't I just text? I don't understand what's up with all the complications and all the apps reinventing everything every time. And so, I don't have to do this. So, Gall presents that idea where it's all these primitives, we're going to have groups, and there's understanding that, you got to make a group app and have that understand things. And you're going to have text, direct messages, and that's a primitive. And you're going to have group conversations, and that's a primitive. And, you're going to want to share images and things, and that should be a primitive. And then everything should be able to tie into these things. There's a great, little image. And it was a really good vision. And that's probably I guess I want to put it on the table because that's the idea of interoperability. And for them, it's you make a crypto payments app, we're just going to tie right into all these other things, right? And you're just going to keep on building. And because you can build it once and be done, well, that's part of the promise. Maybe that's one of the things that I got to put down there. Build it once and be done. like you can just move on. Like you can just tie right into what's already there. Okay, so now I want to talk about like the first little cracks that started showing up, and then how like this stuff did not play out in the in 20 by the end of 2023, like we knew. But when was it? Anyways, I went to, so the first cracks, the place that I'm going to start is something that I had the privilege of going to personally, and that was Reassembly in Wyoming, which was a lovely get together. That was my first? It must have been. I think that was my first IRL stuff. I later got to go to Volcano Summit. Why does it seem like I'm not getting the times quite right? But I had the pleasure of going to Reassembly in Wyoming, and that was just really great. Pull us around. And I point there for seeing the cracks, because it's still in all the hypes. All the Urbit companies are still doing Urbit, and they're working hard on it, trying to solve problems, because, of course there's going to be problems, and they're up for it. But there's a little bit of grumbling, a little bit of hey, this didn't work, so I had to build something. I think, they made Realm, but Trent let it. What is the thing? Holium. So Holium had a bunch of energy behind it. Really cool vision, a desktop Urbit. You should open up your Urbit. It should be like a desktop experience. And there should be some basic apps like Minesweeper and chatting things. And people should, like Figma, be able to log in and collectively look at a Word document that you can all edit and all that stuff. Very cool. Lots of really great talent behind it. And they were the ones, like, if you can watch their presentation, because they had to create a thing called Bedrock, because the interoperability wasn't quite working out. Just to kind of lay it out there, like, when you build the app, everything's fine. You build the one app, you release it to everybody, everything is cool. When you do build an app, you have to make the structures, and this is like the types of everything. And I guess I'll pull it back to the chess world, because I know it. Let me pull this around. Storage low, tap to manage. Let me manage my storage, and I'll come back on the same audio. Okay, off. All right, that should be good. Let me do a clap, clap. We'll see if that works at all. Okay. I was gonna try to explain types in the app world. So if you're gonna make a chess app, the chess app needs to know things like what a move is. And so you create a type, and it's like, well, you need to understand what a rank and file is, so I'll make a type of a rank and file. And you need to understand what a knight is, so I will make a type that gives you the right information for knowing what a pawn, a knight, a queen, a king, and all these things are structures. They're types that you can understand what the thing is. Often, if you make the app and distribute it, it's all going to work out great. It's going to work out perfect. Gall set that up. Should just work. Here's the problem, though. You probably didn't think of everything, and you might want to add a new feature. So let's say you want to be able to reverse the move. Why would that be a feature? I don't know. Don't worry about it. Say you want to expand what a move actually is. You may have forgot something or to add something, so you got to change the types. Okay, now you have some problems, because Urbit is statically typed. It's very strict about it, and if it doesn't know what to do with the type, it just crashes. So you had version 1, and it works great with all other version 1s, and that's fine. Now you have version 2 with the new type, and you need to handle that version change, that new type, elegantly when you're going from version 1 to version 2. I'm I'm realizing I am about to like go down a very long and complicated thing. And so I'm not going to do that. Instead, I will point you to Philip Monk, who does that, who talks about this exact problem at Reassembly. Let me turn this around. He's going to do a much better job and fully explain this, like how distributed apps and their versioning and type changing operates. And he gives examples and stuff. But at least for the casual developer, any of you who have made an app, if you make a change in the types, a lot of times what will happen is you'll get a load fail, and what you end up having to do is nuking your app. So you take all the stuff it's remembering up in state that has like the wrong or the old kind of type, and you just go ahead and nuke it. You just make it go away, and you're like, you know what? Your whole existence is just version 2. And that solves your problem. But the issue is, in a distributed network, if you don't elegantly handle the moments where you had to nuke your app, if you just nonchalantly nuked it and didn't solve, like actually create a bridge from the first type to the second type, everything's going to start collapsing across the distributed network. So that's the warning sign. Here we go. Got to do my tick here. Just to watch out. And then if you go a step further and get version 3, now you actually have to worry not only from, if you solve 1 to 2, you're good, but you need to solve one going from version 1 to version 3. And you need to solve it for the communication. So if you're on version 1, what do you do if you get a move from somebody from version 3 and then your head just explodes and it's a huge issue, right? Okay, let me do this. Okay, so those cracks start to form. Holium, with all of their talent and energy and investment, they made a thing called Bedrock, and you can listen to Trent talk about that. And like that was their kind of solution. It was sort of a database for all of their apps to talk about. So Holium, they had like the Minesweeper and the word processor, and they wanted it all they were like serious about that interoperability. And so they ran into that first. They ran into the problem that these apps can't talk to each other because they're trying to do it all in-house with several apps. And so they had to come up with this other way of kind of gluing them together. And it's kind of like, well, if like that's what they have to do with the apps that they built themselves to talk to each other, like that's a little bit of an issue, isn't it? That's a little crack, huh? So that shows up. You have Philip Monk talking about such things. I don't know. I think there's other examples or whatever in Reassembly. And you could tell that it was just kind of like, there's a little bit of an issue here. And to just sort of fast forward, like that's a great place. So if you want to just see like, what was that moment where everybody was still super into it, but there was problems? Go to the Reassembly stuff. I've got the link for all the different videos and the specific ones too. Because the thing that happens after this, a couple months pass by. Well, these businesses are like, oh my God, this is much harder than we thought because distributed apps are really hard. This is completely new territory because like you can't Google to find out how to solve these things. And it's running into like similar problems that Web 2 already solved. They've already found solutions for. And the biggest one of all, which is they need a return on investment from their investors. And so you run up against all this like extra complexity that was unforeseen because we didn't have a stable enough system like, because the world didn't have a stable enough system for computers to even get to that point where you're testing a whole bunch of distributed apps. Like, I say distributed apps, and it's like it's more distributed than Ethereum, because Ethereum would be like a contract is just on the blockchain. Like it's in a central location with its own like just set rules, right? And this was a much wider thing, and so Gall like propelled us to this new place to find out new issues. And that's exactly the businesses found that out, and they had a financial obligation to their investors. So naturally, they just started to pivot, and they had to like think about new ways of marketing themselves, seeing how they can fulfill that promise to the investors, and they just didn't have any choice. And it's not really about personality. I don't even think it's really about not having a long-term vision. It's not even necessarily about like talent or not. That was just what was going to have to happen. And that is what happened. And then what you have is the aftermath. So I think I have a picture of just all the grayed out apps in the on my ship and other things. And it's just like everything just kind of started to wind down. People kind of just realized like, oh, this isn't going to work. And like people fractured and things, people started to make their own thing because they had to. Kind of mass die off there. Cambrian explosion followed by I don't know what you can't remember what you call this kind of epochs where everything dies. But yes, that is where Urbit got left off. Let me take a pause here. Okay, so let's take you to the end of 2023. There was the developer get together. So it wasn't assembly, it was just for developers in Georgia. What do they call it? Lake Summit of 2023. Again, I wasn't able to attend. That kind of bummed me out. But obviously, energy had shifted. Things had changed. People have to wonder why are these Urbit apps like leaving? What happened? I don't know, right? The things that you have left is like Talon. Talon's doing groups because this is their thing, right? They fostered Urbit out, and they just got to make it happen. Yeah, you kind of just left with the idealists, the people who are just in it, the people who like they really can't pivot, or the people who just love it and didn't take investment money, so they're just here. And so there's at least two videos. Yeah, there's two videos. One of them is I've got all those links there. One of them is the title says so much. The title is Overcoming Suffering Squared. And like whenever I hear it to me, it's like a heroic effort. Is people really pushing forward? A fun little note is like you get to see the previous video of Philip Monk talking about trying to solve for the versioning issues. He's worked with the team to create like what do they call it? Like a 7-role system where it's like there's 7 different things that you think about. It's kind of like an expansion on my like, local versus remote, subscriber versus publisher kind of distinction, Jekyll and Hyde of the apps. But he like has like you got to do 7 of them. You can actually see this in the group's code base. They kind of explain it. Maybe their SIR file, I think. And yeah, they get to talk about it. Philip Monk got to he thought up a solution and it moved Talon forward. And they work really hard. Move back to this. But like when I listen to Overcoming Suffering Squared, what I hear is a lot of like Web 2 problems. Like, it's like, wow, this sounds like just standard Web 2 issues. And I don't know, I'm so grateful for the people working so hard on it. But I know that I personally cannot, could not. It seems so far off from like the promises of before: interoperability, customizability, and like personally, so I can speak personally. So it's like I don't know what everything Talon is doing or have done or what they're thinking. But personally, I've tried a lot of things with my Urbit. I've tried customizing things, but the way that Urbit works now, it doesn't work. As soon as you get an update, it's totally wiped and it's done. If you do want to do a customization, or if you do want to do like, well, if you do want to do a customization, it's very involved. You have to know what you're doing. You have to like get in there and see everything. And that's extra hard to do if it's an old app and it has a whole bunch of versions it has to manage. You'll see a bunch of code that's just trying to help people go from version 1 to version 3, you know? Double checking my time. And so I've made customizations on my Urbit. I've wanted to keep them, but they just get wiped as soon as I get an update. And I have to go back in and change it. And like, I also want like interoperability. So it's like I've built an app that wants to talk to groups and wants to like send chat messages and get chat messages. And for a time, Talon was supporting this kind of third-party thing, and Gall allows for it. Like you can look up what onPoke for groups is expecting, and you can peer into it. They've added some extra steps there, but in theory, you just got to know the right path on poke, and on poke, you have to know the right pokes. You got to know what path for the on peak. You got to know what path on watch to subscribe to. If you dig in, you can find that stuff out, and I've done that. But then it wipes and it breaks, and it's just all fragile, and it's just like basically not worth it. You wouldn't want to build anything on it. Nothing serious. And that's been my personal experience. So I can just say at this point, the promise of interoperability and the promise of customization, done. Nope, didn't happen. There's another video in that aftermath that's actually like Liam. So Gall delinda est. When will Gall finally be vanquished, or whatever the translation is? And then there, you don't have to take what I'm saying. Like you should listen to Liam talk about it, because like Liam's the guy that when this stuff got crazy complicated and you needed to like solve these type changes over the network, and not only the straightforward problem, but like the issue that it caused, and like get things out of the network. You get things unstuck without having to have everybody just nuke and lose all their data. Like Liam is the guy who did it. So he walks you through at a very high level. Like it's not the easiest to understand. But at a very high level, he talks about all the issues with Gall. Like the issues of the subscription model, and the issue with like the upgrading types over the network and all that. And not only does he kind of tear it down, he also presents a solution. So he worked on a thing called shrubbery. So I have talked about shrubbery in the past, and I think it's like a real proposal for how to move forward. And I think I'm more just like one of two, and I don't have it in my notes, but there is a second, I think potentially reasonable option. But But I don't know. Like it's an unknown space, right? Like Gall let us move forward into distributed app up to a point so where we could find out all these issues. Like these are just unknown issues until we moved forward. So we had a reasonable place to start, went far, totally blocked. Like, and we had all the hype and the money to like really play it out. Yo. And like, like Talon doesn't really have a choice, but they're continuing to do that. And in fact, like I'll just make a note here. Like if you're going to make an app in the Gall model, I would definitely pay attention to everything Talon had to do. Like I would study those apps because it is quite the thing. Yeah, like, yeah, and they've had a lot of like strong integrity of like not requiring everybody to lose their data, like their backwards compatibility, like very admirable, and that was kind of their only option, and they really pushed forward with it. So you'd have to pay attention to them. But there's this other, kind of exciting, rebellious kind of thing. I would have to go back here. Kind of exciting, rebellious thing of like a shrubbery. So I have now thought of it more as namespace computing. So one of the amazing things about Urbit is because the name of your Urbit is unique and a part of a finite collection, when you post something, whenever you put something inside of your computer, it can globally, across everywhere, can be a completely unique thing. And that's possible because of really two things. Your Urbit name is completely unique, so you can put that in the front of the path. Like a file. I'm talking to Urbit people, right? So you have your Urbit name in the front, and as you move forward, you also have a version number, and that only increments up. So every time you save in that path, you always increment up the version number, the case, and that means that you maintain referential transparency and everything inside of the Urbit namespace is unique and completely reliable. And you kind of only have, there's no morphing something in a namespace. So it can't be sitting in one spot and then change what it is. It's, if you change it, it will increment up. And that's really, really valuable for distributed network or distributed computers. And so like that's the namespace. And if you maintain that discipline of that namespace, you can do some computation over that. And now you can have a computer that like doesn't have these issues. That's not really all that helpful. Yeah, so I'm going to refer you back to Liam. He kind of explains the shrubbery that he's making, or neo is another word for it. It's like a picnic thing over here. Is this one of the primitive camps? I'll walk backwards so you can see. Yeah, I'd recommend go listen to Liam talk about the idea for sure, because he'll be more accurate and he'll actually know what he's talking about. But Shrubbery leverages this namespace, this like disciplined namespace, and it lets you actually compute over the namespace, like the point. Let's see if I can put my hand up against this tree and make it better. Oh gosh. Okay. So I have this namespace, and if you can compute over the namespace, which is, when I think of computing, I just think of spreadsheets. Like, go to cell A1, there's a number inside of it, bring it over to D3 and add 2 to it. Like, to me, that's quintessential computing. And if you can do that on namespace, where you're like, hey, go to a path on that guy's ship with version number 10, bring that Word document to me, but like, I don't know, run it through an AI or something before it gets to me, and then summarize it, put it in my namespace, and I'll reference it later on, like just fine. And that's, and so, yeah, then you have like all these paths, and then you're like pulling things from it, computing over it, putting it in other paths and stuff like that. That's maybe still not all that helpful, but namespace computing, right? So that's shrubbery. That's kind of the idea, and that's what's important here is like that's like the solution that Liam brings up in Gall Delindus Est, as well as what he's working on currently, what he's insisted upon, and the most visceral way that you can actually play around with a namespace computer is Hawk. And so, I've talked about Hawk, and Hawk is great, and that is basically it. Like, that is the namespace computer. It is just local in a very strong way. It is not what it totally needs to be, but you can have your own local namespace inside of Hawk that you can do namespace computing with. I've even made a guitar course inside of it, and so it's very elegant, and it's all tied to URL paths too. It's a very useful type of shrubbery for making a website, even kind of components and things. Like, for instance, I have a bunch of YouTube videos that I embed on my in my guitar course. When I make the iframe to embed the YouTube video, I like pull from a template in my namespace, and then I just plug in the ID of the video, and that gets plugged in, and then now it's that video with that same iframe and all my different settings on it. Anyways, that was so there's like really useful things with Hawk. In fact, I have videos about that on my normal channel for Ben Brown, where I talk about the behind scenes there. Hold on. Ow, my finger got hurt. So yeah, like that kind of gets to the end of the thing that I wrote up. So that's on my Hawk, by the way. I will link to the outline that I had for trying to talk through the post-mortem of the Gall app ecosystem. Yeah, you can take a look at that. And I've kind of gotten to the end where it's like, oh, Liam talks about these issues with Gall, and he actually came up with a solution. It's shrubbery, and you can actually play with that, but through Hawk, and like that's great. I'm definitely on Team Shrubbery here. Like, I'm definitely on the like Gall as it isn't Martian enough. It has too much Earth still inside of it. We pushed it as far as we could, and we got blocked. And so we need to go back and think about what the actual Martian solution is. And here's one of them. Like, I'd heard from the creator of Hawk, which is Migrev Dulceg, he was a part of a team that was also helping Liam with Neo and his shrubbery for a while under the UF. And he had like a really interesting point where like maybe Gall is actually it's not the app vein, it's actually the protocol vein. And like the protocol vein is all about these distributed apps. And and you'd want that distinction because it actually has a higher calling. Like you can use Gall to get to these higher options of distributed applications, but you're going to have to be careful. So it's like, yeah, and so like you should be called to a higher standard if you're going to make a protocol. So like in Migrev's mind, like Hawk could be that, where like most people should just make a little micro app inside of Hawk. It should just compute over a namespace, and like that's where people should be sandboxing. Like that's where user space should be. Protocol apps like Hawk should be thinking about those much harder things and handling the version controlling and all that stuff behind the scenes without the average developer having to worry about that. And I think that's like that's a reasonable take. I think that would require thinking about it a little bit different. That would mean there's probably only a couple of Gall apps, or there's like these multiple layers. I guess the thing that would bother me, we're gonna do this. The thing that would bother me about that is having a bunch of apps silo away my information. And so you could have a protocol that works with Hawk, but as soon as you want to move all your Hawk stuff to, not Hawk, you might run into issues there and kind of have your siloed walled gardens, like your Talon app. As soon as I want to move things back and forth between my Talon app and my Hawk app, well, now you got to have had everybody work together with the protocols, right? And wouldn't it be nice if we could go back to the promises of the Urbit app distribution where everything is interoperable? I think so. I don't know what the real solution is. I think namespace computing is very promising. I will tell you that Hawk doesn't have that, a lot of the things that you're gonna really want out of the Urbit. It's not really networked. I can't go grab a part of somebody else's namespace. I can't go grab that and compute over it. There isn't a lot of communication over the network. And there's also not version control. So the namespace isn't as disciplined. There's a lot of mutability. You can change what's there. Might be able to block the wind with my phone here. We'll see. Maybe I should be heading back. Yeah, let's just head back. Why not? Basically, it's funny. If you know it, Clay has everything that we want. Clay allows you, it has the disciplined namespace, the referential transparency. It works really hard to do that. And you can send things across the network. You can even, do whitelists or blacklists for access control. Does the whole version control thing. Clay does a lot that we really want. That's the Urbit stuff. And Gall apps can't do what Clay does because Gall apps don't have that namespace discipline. So the solution, so if you do go to Talon and see what its solution is, a lot of it is using a version and being okay, here's the peak path for version 1. Here's the second. And as you move up, you just you re-add that namespace discipline that's inside of Clay into your types and into your paths. And so that's a part of the issue. That's why it has this Web 2 Earth problem is the paths became custom APIs. There was no Gall couldn't get so granular to say, oh, this is how your paths need to operate to have this namespace thing. So we don't have this issue of oh, what type am I using? As well as what's the new path? How has the API changed because you changed the types even? And it's just it's Earth issues, right? And you had to re-implement what works. And so, anyways, that goes with the protocol apps can deal with that, and Hawk can smooth those things over, the full mature version of it. Okay, I maybe did it a little bit clumsily, but I think I talked about everything that I wanted to. Hawk is a namespace that you can play around with. Namespace computer you can play around with. I've got these, I guess, show notes, I would call it, my little outline lots of resources and videos to watch. And yeah, so like there's the conclusion, right? So let's look at the desk. What have I set out here? Right at the top of app distribution launch, there was a bunch of promises. People got excited about it, and it took off, and people took on some obligations. Okay. However, those promises never came to fruition. Not all of them. And people just, like, the businesses had to pivot, and the apps just kind of had to die off because we didn't have a real solution. Let's see. And then, yeah, we got to see that. We got to see that playing out even in the hype. And then even like the aftermath of like, okay, now what's up? So, yeah, so for context, it's the end of 2025, November 2025. I intended to make this video at the start of last year. There's been a lot of drama in the Urbit world, multiple coups, lots of Machiavellian work going on. And it's in a much more stable place now, but it was a lot of like topsy-turvy. Even more fanciful promises have been like thrown out, and we'll have to just see how they play out. I do want to say, I do want to say that, I have to do this. Oh no, turn on. Oh, I only got 10% left. Well, I don't know what else to say. Yeah. What was I going to say? That's a problem. I need that battery. I'm going to pause it and make a new one. Here's what I wanted to say. I joined the core developer call, the core blitz, on a regular basis. And I like to go there because it's very calm. The people who are there have just been working through all this, all the drama and everything. And like, they just don't see the point of getting wrapped up into it. They just want to build this thing and they want to do it right. And they're just taking their time to do it. And the UF is supporting them. And it's very positive, and I really like it. I like the energy, very tortoise, like tortoise in the hairstyle. And like, yeah, I'm excited for it. I have my guitar course that I built with Urbit, and I think we'll get it right. You know, Gall was a great go. I think it had its limitations, and we have to see it as our first attempt, and we need to try another thing. I'm on Team Shrubbery, but we'll have to see. It might not be it. Definitely pro like namespace, pro referential transparency. Let's get more of that inside of everything, right? Yeah, that's it. I'm nordus-mocwyl. Thanks for joining me on my walk. If you want more videos, I do have the very last milestone of my fund for my 2024 video making. You can encourage me to make more. And I'm still committed to giving some of what I make to Give Directly, because I love that charity. We'll talk about that sometime. But yeah, have a great holiday. Bye.